Welcome with a small delay, very warm welcome from Zurich to the panel of Women of Wealth. My name is Olga Miller. I'm the CEO and co-founder of SmartPurse, which is a financial wellness platform that educates women and connects them to advisors as well as suitable financial products. And in my former life, I spent about 12 years in UBS Wealth Management implementing a women market strategy. And since then, helped roughly 4 to 6 financial institutions to do the same. And it's my absolute pleasure to be the moderator for this panel this afternoon, morning, or wherever in the world you are, for you and with you. And of course, it wouldn't be any fun if it was just me talking here to the camera from beautiful Switzerland. So I have fabulous guests with me, and I hope that both of them are online now. So let me see if Annabelle Spring is online and everybody can see her. Annabelle, can you say something? Okay, that might not be the case yet. So we shall see if we come back to that later, but I definitely can see Priti Gupta here with me. Priti, can you say hello?
Hi, hello, Olga. Pleasure to be here.
Absolute pleasure to have you here with us, Priti. And we're going to start the session in just 1 minute. Let me just check with backstage whether we will have Annabelle with us or not, or you will give us a sound when she is online. Is that okay? Colleagues from tech? Okay. Anyway, we're going to go and take it as it comes, since this is all a live summit and everything is happening live. You know, one has to be ready for the unforeseen. And I am the first person to attest to that. Being a tech entrepreneur, usually the most embarrassing things happen to me, such as forgetting to unmute myself, or I never know where to swap my charts. I'm not sure whether the same thing happens to you as well eventually, Priti.
Absolutely, a lot of times, and much more than that as well. So
exactly. So we remain faithful that Annabelle will be able to join us, and you all will be able to hear from her. But maybe while we wait for her to join, let me frame the topic of this panel a little bit. So Women of Wealth actually is the title of a piece of research that Ines, Rebecca, and myself did back in 2019, and that was published at the Financial Alliance Summit when we still all could meet in person in a big room in Paris. And what we did throughout that research was to ask roughly 20 financial services institutions in the wealth management sphere across the globe what they feel was the biggest level of progress the wealth management industry has made when it came to adopting women market strategies. And we also asked these institutions to rate themselves and basically tell us on a scale between 1 to 5, lots of progress, little progress. Well, guess what? Everybody rated themselves somewhere around 2.5, maybe 3, which was saying, okay, some progress has been made, but we feel as an industry, we are definitely not there yet, and that there would be a lot to be done for women of wealth. When we then asked about the opportunity, actually everybody attested and said, you know, women of wealth is a huge, huge, global, universal, untapped opportunity. And when we then ask and say, well, so then why is the industry not progressing a little bit faster? Many things were mentioned, such as, well, it is a financial education challenge, and that's also proven in statistics. Even today, 6 out of 10 women abdicate or delegate long-term financial planning responsibility to their partners. But also people have told us and said, look, inside my organization, we publish a lot of research, but when it then comes to adapt a holistic strategy, I am struggling because maybe not each and every department actually sees the need. And in order to change a global organization, we all might know what it takes, right? You need a business case, you need the relevant data, you need talent diversity, you need education for your workforce, be it for your digital creators, may it be for your hands-on financial advisors. So a whole framework of factors has come together what could be a good practice to adopt a women-focused market strategy when it comes to women of wealth. And we today, as part of this panel, would love to explore that all together with you, actually from 2 perspectives, right? You have seen here with me is Priti, who is also the founder of Lakshmi, and you will tell us a little bit more about this, Priti, and what Lakshmi does. And Lakshmi is serving, I would say, not only women of wealth, but basically the mass market. And then I hope that Annabelle Spring, the global head of wealth at HSBC, will still be able to join us, because we could and should hear from her about some of the exciting findings HSBC has taken with their latest research, as well as what the organization is doing. So that kind of frames the topic, I hope, for all of you. But, enough from me. Let me hand over to you, Priti. Do you want to say a couple of words about yourself?
Yes, absolutely. Thank you, Olga. And thank you for just setting the stage so well with all the numbers. So I'm Preeti. I belong to India, and I'm the founder of a financial platform only for women in India, known as Lakshmi. The name, of course, comes from the Indian goddess of wealth. She is a woman of wealth. Traditionally, I think we've, as Indians, prayed to her in all our festivals to bestow us wealth. But what I realized that women, and this is of course global now that you've set the context, Olga, but at least around me in India, I realized that the self-doubt in the minds of women was just so high when it came to taking on charge of their finances. So I think it was that dichotomy, and which is why Lakshmi is named after the goddess. We are a community-led fintech where community is the core, and it solves for a lot of the friction points that women face when it comes to just interacting with financial products or financial services. So we have the platform caters to the learning needs, the awareness, financial literacy, just normalizing money conversations, having peer-to-peer conversations about money and financial products, and eventually a platform where they can invest their money. So all the products as well, which are suited, tailored for the needs of women. We started a year and a half, almost 2 years back. And I think we've done a fantastic journey from then to now in building Lakshmi up.
That's a very exciting journey, Priti, and thank you for sharing this journey with us. Now, I would have one question, right? I understand that you also have been in an absolutely instrumental role building out a wealth management organization in India, and yet you stepped out in order to found Lakshmi. What made you to do so?
Well, the primary reason, Olga, is because I am a woman and I can see the need. And I think just 2 decades of being in financial services, doing wealth management for the ultra high net worth to even the mass affluent and mass, I realized that women were being completely left out of the ecosystem of growing their wealth or growing their money. And it was very disturbing. And I think for me, especially when I went out and met women and convinced them that, this is what you need to do. You need to make your money grow beyond inflation so that it's not losing its value. And pretty much every time the reply was, oh, can I ask my father? I think I'm going to check with my husband. And while all of that was fine, say 10, 15 years back, today with the changing lifestyle, the dynamics, between relationships, people, it was very important for women to take charge of that. So for me, I think that's where, the sort of incentive or the drive came from. But I think the stage was set really when, India went through demonetization, and a lot of the women who were saving their money in cash realize that they can no longer do that. They'd rather, start putting it into or financializing it. I think we have a very wonderful tech setup in India now known as India Stack. So the entire digitization, democratization of investment just made it a great time to get women into the fold of financial services. And to me, that's the larger opportunity. The mass and the mass affluent, these are the women who need it most. Advisors weren't really reaching out to them because they weren't low-hanging fruit. It takes the cost of acquisition and the cost of servicing was just not viable for wealth management companies. So that was an entire gap. And here we were these women who were, who just started earning their money or had been, in their career for the last 5-7 years, but didn't really know what to do with their money. No platform to go and ask. Huge social conditioning where, the mindset was men manage money and they do it better. An industry that was, the incumbent players were all men. So there were men talking to men. None of the information that came out was relatable to these women. It was just a lot of jargons. It didn't meet the behavioral aspects of women when it comes to money. And I think for me, that was that market. That is the next 500 million in India that can really make an impact if they start growing their money. So I think all of this put together really was a great incentive, great opportunity to step out and build a product, build a platform for these women.
That's absolutely wonderful. I mean, I kind of here on the other side of the globe, right, did exactly the same. First, I'm working with the world's largest wealth manager globally to inspire some change, and then eventually stepping out for very similar motives. What I would be interested in, since we are having here kind of a fireside chat, pretty, because I think Annabelle is still having technical difficulties. What I would be interested in knowing from you is, do you think that the wealth management industry or players are kind of missing the boat, that it is a missed opportunity because it's not changing fast enough based on all the things that you said?
Well, I think the world of wealth management is just so attuned to servicing, especially men, because they've been the decision makers for the longest time. And I think the legacy mindset that comes with that, it's very hard to bring about change in larger organizations, conventional organizations, which is where I think, Olga, fintechs like ours play a very large role, because we are using technology as a platform to break barriers, which I think wealth advisory firms are unable to. And I think in some way you can actually create hyper personalization even for every woman out there who may belong to the mass and the mass affluent as well. I think it's a tough, I truly believe everyone can't do everything, right? A wealth firm, a legacy firm doesn't have the wherewithal, the agility, the adaptability to really quickly cater to women across the spectrum. I think what they do really well. What is happening though, what I see changing, and which is something that we did at Anand Rathi as well, is we started including family into the conversations. So, when we spoke about wealth, we said, look, we don't just want to speak to you, we want to speak to your family as well, because this is a strategy that everybody in the family should be on. You want all the four wheels of the car moving towards one direction. And I think that is finding a lot of acceptability. So I think that's the first move, where you're getting the spouse, partner, children on board as well. And probably from there, hopefully, we will go to the next step. I do see a lot of wealth advisors creating a separate sort of, a separate setup for catering to women. But these are essentially women of wealth, right? We're talking about high net worth, ultra net worth sort of a target segment. I think the mass is still being completely underserved.
And from your experience, do you feel that the needs of women, and I'm not referring to the investment products, okay, because the investment products might differ by the amount of wealth that you have at hand, but kind of the needs, the feelings, the financial education needs, all of that actually are dependent on the amount of money that the woman holds? Or is this more like a globally universal phenomenon?
It is, Olga, it is a global universal phenomenon, which is why when I said that, one firm or one setup cannot cater to everybody, particularly to women. I think because to reach out to women, there are certain things that are very important to be a part of your offerings. Whether it is financial awareness, literacy, in a manner that is far more, like I said, the behavioral aspect when it comes to the way women think about money is very, very different than men think about money. We are very attuned towards financial goals. That's how, even if we save money at the back of our head, it's always for something. We know in our mind that this is what we're saving for. So I think the way we think about money is very different. I've had this conversation very often where people have told me when I was part of the larger organization that, women are very risk averse. So they're always happy with putting their money into a fixed deposits or into banks as savings accounts or into some form of gold. I completely disagree. I think women are very risk aware. If they have the right information, if they have access to a lot of the information that is normally sent out, which they can relate to, I think they have the ability to make great pragmatic and balanced decision. What is missing is that entire awareness and content and learning programs or learning that is suited to their needs. So I think that is very different for women than men. I also think the way women build trust is very different. And I've said this on many platforms that men build trust with a transaction. Um, so if there is a transaction platform, men will try and do a small amount of transaction, and that's how they build trust. I think women it's a longer journey. Like I said, they're risk aware, so we want to know more about it. We will, have that peer-to-peer discussion. It's pretty much like saying if the doctors told me something, but I'd still like to ask my women friends, right? So if an advisor's told me something, I'd still like to ask my women friends what they do with their money. And I think that journey, because it is so long, wealth advisors have shied away, because again, that's what makes the cost of acquisition, the cost of servicing just so high for them. So these are, I think, behavioral differences for women. Trust, eventually when you build trust, it converts into transaction. So I think all these differences and these are true for women universally. I'm sure you will also agree to a lot of this. It's not just peculiar to India. And I think that's why globally, I think it's great to see these trends where, people like you, so Smart Purse, Lakshmi, a lot of what Financial Alliance is doing is really creating that awareness. And there are so many players now coming on board to cater to niche audiences, like women or like Gen Z or like teenagers, or we were speaking about, the other diversity and inclusion piece across even financial products or in fintechs. So it's exciting, and I think it opens up a very bright future for women across the globe.
Thank you very much for this. So that actually would lead me to a question: what adaptations, coming from a larger wealth management organizations, what adaptations have you done in Lakshmi? What is it doing differently than the big player wasn't?
Well, exactly, removing all these friction points. So I think, other than digitization, democratization of investments, hyper personalization by using technology, which is what a lot of the fintechs do. But because it is women focused, I think one of the key things that we do differently is we first of all normalize money conversations. I've all my life looked around and I've seen that women find it very hard to have money conversations. We will talk about parenting, we will talk about a lot of things, but when it comes to money conversations, most platforms, we find them very inhibiting because they're, we're worried about being judged. So at Lakshmi, we've created a community to begin with, which removes a lot of friction points. So that's a place where a woman starts openly. It's a safe space where she's talking about money, challenges, opportunities that she faces. What it does is helps her, let go of her self-doubt and build trust in herself, build trust in the platform, because there's a lot of peer-to-peer conversation. What would ordinarily take a woman a year to decide or a year and a half to decide, typically we've sort of compressed that time frame to 2 or 3 months. So I think that's what, and building a community is easier said than done. It does need a lot of effort and time to ensure that, that, and because it is talking money, you need to moderate it, you need to get the right resources in. to build the community. So that's one thing that we've done differently. I think our learn modules and all our content on the platform again are very, very women centric. These are content pieces that women relate to very, very easily. So that's very different. And we've, for example, if you have a content that says that, if you're taking a sabbatical, this is how you need to plan your money. So I think keeping in mind the various life stages, which as you know is different, so different for women, right? So whether it's career breaks that you take due to your life stages, whether it's your career peak, whether it is retirement, all of that in a very, very easy and relatable manner. And even our content is very, very attuned towards the way women would think about money. So these are the things we're doing differently. And then based on all of this, really building the recommendation logic, which uses all these touch points to make it, to make that journey of learning to investing easy for her. So then getting in the right products, the suitable products, for her to sort of make a choice. Again, here, Olga, I'd love to say that one of the, when we met about 5,000 women before we started Lakshmi, one of the biggest friction point that women said was that, when I go to these digital platforms, there's just so much choice that the first thing they ask me is, what's your risk profile? And now, based on your risk profile, here are 20 mutual funds that you should choose from, right? And those two are the toughest choices. One, to tell a woman, ask a woman, what's your risk profile? I think that's the big turnoff. And second, I think to just give her, just open up that choice where it's hard for her to do that decision making. So simplifying all of that through touch points. Again, we are not ignoring risk profile, but doing it in a manner which helps her understand this is the risk and this is how you mitigate it. I think that conversation has to happen together. So I think the entire journey is completely different than what it would be on any other platform.
So now, if we put ourselves into the shoes to many of the people here listening, right, and they might come from different financial services organizations, from the top of your head, what would be your recommendation to anyone to listen? What steps can be taken when you are inside an organization to actually, better the state? What are kind of the building blocks of a successful strategy?
Well, I think, it's always been, we've always heard that put your customer in the center, right? And then you build everything around the customer. So I think that's the beginning point. If you're building for women, I think there are 2 or 3 things that are very important. One is clearly look at the behavioral and empathy aspect, because that is very, very important to us women, whether it is, lifestyle products or it is financial products. It's very important. Second, I think, women they are informed decision makers. So make sure that you're sort of making that information available. And the third piece is trust. I think trust plays a very, very important role. It does anyways in financial products across customer base, but I think for women and the way they build trust is something that you have to keep in mind when you're building for women. So these are a few suggestions that I can give.
So from my perspective, maybe to add to this, because of course, we missed one panelist. My experience from UBS, and also confirmed in the research that we did in 2019 with the Financial Alliance, what has come in addition to all the great things that you said, Priti, was to educate the advisors, right? To educate the advisors, because at least me being, when I still was a woman in UBS, I spent about a year traveling the world and talking to rooms full of men. Number one, that women don't necessarily need a female advisor, but they need a person that they can connect with personally and trust. And the second thing that I absolutely had to learn the hard way throughout all of my consulting, as well as when I was in UBS, is the power of data. I think that you, Priti, and me have it very easy to talk building something from scratch, because it's much easier to segregate the data. When you see yourself in a large-scale organization, being customer-centric, sometimes it's even just hard to get a gender split on your data. And I don't mean just the amount of accounts held by women, but the contact frequency, the customer experience score, the net promoter score, how is your communication being perceived? It can be an extremely healthy exercise to actually look at kind of your core data set with a gender lens. For me, and many of the banks that I advise now, this has been a very revealing exercise to actually depict small-scale opportunities that don't even cost a lot to change, but make a huge, huge difference in the customer experience. I don't know, Pretty, if you have seen similar things.
Yeah, absolutely. I think in my larger organization, absolutely. And I think it also helped Olga to have more women advisors, especially in a country like India, because I think there's the sort of, it was just easier to practice what you put as part of process if you had women advisors as well. But absolutely. And I'd actually love to, since this is turning out to be a fireside chat, I would love to hear from you certain examples of something like this, like you said, small changes, anything that you did which thought made a huge difference.
Look, so besides educating advisors and taking a gender split on the data, what proved to be extremely revealing is to look with a gender lens at all the marketing materials. And here again, I'm talking the very practical things. When I was in UBS, we took a full-hearted decision to ban all panels, okay? So the panels that would look more diversified than you and me right now on the screen, right? And yeah. This proved to be an extremely helpful strategy because by doing so, all the communication surrounding a centrally led event strategy all in a sudden started to diversify. We also looked at things such as who do we invite to our events, who do we invite to our talks. We looked, as already said, at how is the communication being perceived. For instance, key recommendation of the financial services institutions, such as the Chief Investment Officer Outlook. And we found out that these communications were consumed by only 5 to 7% of women, and all the rest were men. And we also found some other very helpful things, such as the majority of the readers of these communications were people from the industry, which necessarily wasn't the intent of these communications because it was like a self-propelling thing. And so this is what I mean by these little changes, right? That little changes can get you a very long way. Undoubtedly, one of the biggest levers for a business impact was actually the following two things. Number one, making couple conversation mandatory once a year, where the couple had to come together and try to have an inclusive conversation. And number two, really anchoring some of the key data, such as prospect pipeline by gender, contact frequency by gender, inside the kind of core KPI sets, how the organization has been measured. And I still think that these things will create enormous awareness in your organization if you manage to get this far. What also will be happening is that small changes start to happen. I just recently had the pleasure to advise a large-scale wealth manager, and I actually asked the advisors and said, so, tick on this box in this survey, how many of the daughters or wives of the male clients from the bottom of your heart do you actually know personally? 60% of the advisors knew half of the daughters or wives in person. Now, if you combine that with the fact that, long time published research already said that 7 out of 10 women will swap their advisor or wealth manager when it comes to a separation or a partner's death, you basically see the business upside that is just in this very simple measure. If you manage to inspire each and every one of your professional advisors to actually get to know the women of all the male clients they serve. So that's what I mean by these very practical things.
Yeah.
Now,
so you remind me of this incident. About 2 years back, we actually did a marketing campaign for my wealth management company, the larger company. And I remember when we did this marketing, it was an advertising campaign, brand campaign. And in so it had a voiceover in the end, which said, "Oh, we've got a plan for you." And when the advertising agency came back, it was all said. Each one, so there were 6 versions of the ad. Each one, the voiceover was by a man. And I actually asked them that, why do you not have a woman saying it? Why don't you have a woman saying, "Oh, we've got a plan for you"? And they were a bit taken aback. They were like, "Okay, we've never done this before, right? We've never had a woman do a voiceover in a financial product." And I think these are those little things, right? Which really, because if you have a woman saying, you have a woman hearing. And I think these are those little important things. And what you said was just, I think, just so important and so brilliant.
Absolutely. I mean, to conclude this conversation, if you had a magic wand, Priti, and you wished one thing, every person listening to us here today, to change and do one thing, what would it be for you?
Well, I think, I'm assuming a lot of our audience is women. And I think the one thing that I say is that your personal finance is something that you should take charge of. A lot of women do it, but I think it's very important to look around you, because we as women are collaborative, to look around and see women around you who are not doing it, to get them into the fold. Because I think when women manage money, it makes a difference not just to her life, but to her family, to the society, to the community, and to the country. And I think there is huge power in that. So if I had a magic wand, I'd really have all the women manage their money, or take charge of their money, or be, even if it is managing along with a partner, really be, sharing that load and know exactly how their money is working.
Thank you. So I hope that everybody takes some inspiration. If you are looking at a broader framework, how you could, or the building blocks of kind of a successful women market strategy, I think we established that there still is a lot and a big opportunity in women of wealth, but that their needs are not that different, right? The need for personal connection, the need for financial education, the differences in how choices are being made inside your organization, to advocate for diversity, but also not take diversity, or maybe the lack of, as an excuse for not doing anything. I heard it so often. Yeah, we first need to hire more women, and then 3 years later, we can't find the women. Mind you, all the male advisors can be educated and trained to serve women well, and they will do a stellar job. So that also shouldn't serve as an excuse not to do anything. We touched on the point of data and the importance of data. And here, really from the lady in Switzerland that spent 1 year buried in Excel spreadsheets trying to summarize the global data set, just take it to heart that fewer data points that you can actually work with and that show you a picture are much better and much faster than absolute perfection, because it can become a boiling the ocean exercise when your organization is large. And finally, I think we both touch and advocate here with Priti for financial education, which can be done from within an organization, but also can be done independently. I know of multiple financial services players now establishing kind of financial education centers, which are almost have a Chinese wall, and therefore can provide impartial financial education, which I think is very important. So I hope that all of you took away some pointers and some inspiration on what could be done. And kind of my final call to action here would be, almost crying out from Zurich, is not to think that the world is already okay, because it is not. I think pretty right. We both meet women, hundreds of women still hungry for more financial education and for still having their money on their savings account. And I think it is a duty of our industry and the duty of all of us, all the women within, to actually keep fighting for change, because the financial services industry still needs a lot of changing. And so with that, if you are tired of listening, but there is one final thing that you should do tomorrow, is to go back to your organization and ask, where are the women? Where are the women in the organization? Where are the women as customers? Where are the women in your client book? And what is it that we can do to serve them better? Everybody asked me, say, Olga, how did you change the world's largest wealth manager in just 3 years? it was with this simple question asked each and every day, multiple times. And so I hope that with that, we could take you on a journey and inspire you a little bit. And thank you, Priti, for being such a wonderful fireside chat partner. And greetings to you, Annabelle. We hope we meet you one day soon. And thank you to the Financial Alliance for Women for doing this event.
Thank you, Olga. This was a pleasure. And yes, we missed Annabelle, but look forward to chatting with you again. And Financial Alliance, thank you for having these conversations.
Bye.
Thank you. Bye-bye.